Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Shealess podcast. As always, I am Lou. That is Vin. And today we have a very special guest, longtime New York City radio host and personality, Brendan Tierney. Brendan Tierney, welcome to the show.
Thank you, guys. What's happening? How you doing?
All is well. I mean, coming down off the amazing month and a half that we just had with the New York Knicks, something that, we haven't seen here in a very long time here in New York, a parade down the Canyon of Heroes. And what a moment that was.
Oh my God.
So just coming down from that, Vinny and I, we went from being on a high of the New York Knicks to, going back to what the Mets have been over the last couple of weeks,
The
to
lowest.
the
Yep.
lowest of the low. So, Vin, why don't you get us started? I know we had a couple of questions for BT today. So go ahead, start it up.
So, Brandon, actually, you're joining us at a great time because Mendoza just got fired. I don't
Yeah.
know what you feel about it. Personally, I think he was scapegoated. I think Stearns needs to really take the brunt of this. I don't know how you feel about it. If you want to just let us know.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I said a few times, you could take Billy Martin, you could take Buck Showalter, you could take Tony La Russa, you could take Sparky Anderson and meld them together and have one manager, and they're not going to win with this team. I mean, it's a horrendously constructed team. They just took too many chances. Basically, nothing's worked out. But while I do believe he's a scapegoat, like you couldn't just keep going through this every single night where
Right.
I feel badly for the guy. I watch Boone and I watch Mendoza. I watch those press conferences. Obviously, helps with my content. And it's the same thing every night. It's like, not acceptable. We've got to play better. We've got to do, we can't have this. And after a while, it's just dead man marching. And you've got to do something, even if it's maybe a little bit unfair or without full justification. Now, I don't think Mendoza really was a very good manager. I don't. I think you go
agree.
back to last year, the bullpen. I thought there were some situations where he didn't pinch run. I think there was one with Marte who was coming off an injury. He let them in. He got thrown out at the plate. I thought this goes back to last year where he ran Vientos too much out of third base, where Beatty was the much better defensive option down the stretch. It took him a while to get that memo, but it doesn't mean that he's the most culpable here. That's Stearns. But the pecking order for any sport is when things go awry, the coach, Aaron Glenn with the Jets, if they go 4-13 this year, he'll be fired. Muji will stay. That's just the way it goes. So I get it. I think he's a really good man. I think maybe his next job he could be better, but he's not without fault. But it's not ultimately his fault. The team's horrendous. It's terrible.
Yeah, and I actually wanted to ask you, going back to like you lined up all those managers, and another thing that I had a big problem with Stearns on is I mentioned this morning. Whenever we see a manager get fired, it always seems like the bench coach or somebody along the coaching staff is next to step in line.
Mhm.
Where with Stearns, he couldn't even put together a coaching staff to trust somebody on the bench to step in for the rest of the year. Is that
Yeah.
just not incompetence, or I don't know how to feel about that?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say that you're wrong. I don't necessarily look at that as the first thing that hits me. What really hit me was when Stearns came out immediately and said, no matter what, he's the interim. We're going to have a full search in the winter. Like, talk about, and I know that he's okay with it. Obviously, the new manager for the Mets here. But like, to me, that's the wrong messaging. Like, to me, there's got to be a reward for achievement or overachievement, and there's got to be a
Absolutely.
penalty for underachievement. So you come out and you're basically saying, no matter what we do, this dude's got no chance to be the manager. Which I get. Like, okay, but you don't have to say that. You could kind of do that behind closed doors and then attack it, with real vigor in the offseason and try to get somebody in here that's going to make, whether it's Core or somebody else, that's got more of a resume and can maybe make more of a difference. But I also think it's about him, trusting lieutenants and having the messaging be on point and nobody coloring outside the lines. When things are going this badly, you better put somebody in there that you trust, whether or not he's the right man for the job. But like everything with the Mets this year, and too often with the Mets in their history, it's either the players aren't good enough or the owner's a mess, going back to Wilpons, or the messaging is a complete joke. This year, you get a little bit of everything.
Right.
So it's really added up to one of the worst seasons in Mets history, no question.
Especially when you take into account the payroll.
Yep,
And
I agree.
and it's funny. It's funny you mentioned Cora because I just have one more question. Then I'll let Lou ask you a question.
Sure.
I put out 4 guys that I thought were interesting. Cora was one of them. and then I mentioned Beltran, and it's basically 3 first-time guys. One would be first time in the MLB, Beltran, Pujols, or I got a lot of slack for this because of '06, Yadier Molina.
Yeah, Yachty, yeah. '06, yeah, the Cardinals with the Wainwright, Beltran. I mean, listen, the way the Mets are now, I just don't think the Mets have any leadership. I mean, people can sit here and say, "Well, Lindor's the captain." Captain of what? He's the captain of the sinking ship. There's
Right,
been there
Captain
but guys,
Titanic.
let's be honest, man. There's been and it's not that he's not a good player. Lindor's obviously a very good player, but there's been one common trait the last couple of years with these Mets, and it's really a lack of chemistry. And there's other
Mhm.
issues too, some that actually supersede the chemistry, like personnel stuff, as we already hit. But when you've been around as long as Lindor's been, and you get rid of guys that you thought weren't good leaders, or you got rid of them for whatever reason you may have gotten rid of them for, you got to go back. The buck eventually has to stop with Lindor. I mean,
Mhm.
so
Yeah,
I mean, and I say that not to pile on Lindor, but because the Mets don't have good leadership at all, and because they've got a couple of young players. I really like Ewing. I like Benj. Good energy, good baseball traits, just all around baseball players, which the Mets obviously need more of. To me, even though I love Beltran's baseball acumen and his history, I'm not so sure after where they've been this year and last year with Mendoza that I myself, if I own the Mets or if I'm even Stearns at this point, I'd be so willing to hand it off and trust somebody who's never done the job. Like
it's
that's
fair.
that's a bit of a risk here. I know it's worked out in the NBA where guys, point guards or players, very quickly get on the bench, and certain situations it's worked out well, and it's even worked out in baseball. Like but you've got to mitigate risk, and you've got to like rule out any potential learning curve because the Mets need to get this act together fast. And the last thing you want is a manager who's overwhelmed, and you got the young kids now they're in year 2, and the culture's even worse. Like I get it, I understand the value. Like Pujols is intriguing to me, Beltran's intriguing to me, Yachty's intriguing, great baseball men, but where the Mets are now, I'm not so sure that that's something I'm looking to do. I probably want somebody who's done the job. Doesn't mean that that's what they'll do, but that's probably what I would focus on.
Yeah, I get it. Makes sense.
You know?
And I agree with that. And something that we mentioned on is really attacking that culture. And what is the culture? What is the identity of the team? And that's something that we've been searching for the last couple of years. Really, I'm a huge Lindor fan. Since the moment he came here, then obviously the 2024 run. We finally have a guy that could be the face of the franchise. But taking a look back and reflecting on what he has done here, like you mentioned, he has been the quote unquote captain of the sinking ship. And when as fans and somebody who praised him for all he did in 24. And then you question the moves that the front office makes and ripping apart the core of the team, letting Pete Alonso go and Brendan Nimmo go and Jeff McNeil, excuse me. But having that culture, somebody that can come in there and really give this team an identity, especially like you said, with the young talent that is now on this team, you don't want these years to start stockpiling to quote unquote wasted years. Like
Yeah.
they,
Yeah.
sorry, go ahead, please.
No, and I think that's a really good point because you only get a finite window for your prime here.
Right.
And let's face it, sooner than people want to really think about it, they're going to have a very interesting decision on Juan Soto. I mean,
Yes.
that's coming
Yeah.
after the 5 years. Now, we all know that they can keep him. You tack on more money. So even if he opts out, although I don't think he's ever going to get that money from anybody else at this point, even though he's an amazing player, but he's pretty one dimensional, not a great fielder, not even running anymore this year like last year. So I think that when you look at, where they are and the contracts of some of their guys, namely Soto and Lindor, and more so with Lindor because he's older than Juan Soto, like you've got to understand that every year is just getting, deleted from his prime. And
Right.
every year that happens, it's not like he plays first base. He's in the middle of the infield. And now the injuries have started creeping. The numbers won't be there this year. He's not a kid anymore. It's not going to get better for Lindor.
Right.
He's going to get worse. Eventually, he's going to have to move to second or third. And for that kind of money and for the kind of energy, I'm not saying it's all his fault. I want to be clear about that.
Of course.
It's not just Lindor's job to make sure every mistake that Stearns has made or, previous iterations of Mets management and ownership have made. It's not all at his doorstep, but I don't feel like he's enough of a positive force aside from the stats to justify moving mountains to to placate him, whether it's moving guys out that he didn't get along with or whatever the situation might be. So yeah, time's ticking, and the it's already at you're going to look at this. Let me just take a step back too, not to bore everybody with the CBA and the impending work stoppage, but just a thumbnail sketch. I know that you guys know this, but what the union's trying to shove, what Major League Baseball is trying to shove down the union's throat here is, forget about the 10, 11, 12, 13-year contracts. They want 5-year deals. And then if you're obviously being retained by your own team, you could get 6. Okay. Now, I don't think that that's going to happen. That's like a starting point. And if they get 7 or 8, then the union will look at it, or baseball will look at it as a win. The point is, though, I think one of the great advantages for Steve Cohen, and that's his checkbook, his affluence, the disparity that he enjoys over most teams outside of the Dodgers and Toronto, the Rogers group, a very affluent, a lot more money than Hal Steinbrenner, as we know. That's going to be mitigated with the new CBA. So the Mets' ability to buy their way out of this, I think, shrinks by the year. So if you can't buy your way out of it, player development's got to be great. And let's face it, whether it's Mauricio or Alvarez or Beatty, any of those guys, Vientos, I don't think really any of them are that good, to be fair. I think Ewing and Benj are different, but they're going to have to thread the needle of doing things a little more old school where, listen, Juan, we can't give you $800 gazillion because we're not allowed to do whomever the next great player is. So the Mets are going to have to be more of an attractive destination based on success and based on stability, and they better find it soon. Otherwise, and I don't say this to take a shot at the Mets, but like the Mets are back to being the Mets. Like the Mets are back to being a laughing stock where, you know what I mean? Like they took Soto, they had some positive energy, and things were pointed up. And like only the Mets and a few other teams, the Jets around pro sports, I mean, it quickly goes backwards. So they're a mess now, and Steve can't buy his way out of it with the new CBA that's coming.
So let me ask you this question. With that, like all of those moves that we just mentioned, and then you mentioned also a possibility of a lockout and a work stoppage due to many topics that is going to come up in the CBA.
Many.
Do you think that Stearns and Cohen saw the team as was constructed last year, said, listen, we have a lot of aging players on our team. Yes, they are the core of the team. But unfortunately, some decisions have to be made with the thought of possibly a salary cap coming. Do you think Stearns used the defensive mishaps of the team as a quote unquote excuse to rip the team apart? Or do you think that they're seeing in the future, we need young controllable contracts on this team preparing for what could be a lockout next year?
It's an interesting thought. He hasn't earned the benefit of the doubt, though. And by the time, if that actually, let's say that that's true. I don't know that it is, but let's walk through it. If that's true, by the time that plan comes to fruition, like it's not going to be this year, and it might not even be next year. And at that point, I mean, everybody wants him gone now.
Right.
So, how valid, how much juice will he still have as again, he's got none now, and Met fans can't stand him, and rightfully so. I don't think that that's the case because even though, I've gotten into the weeds on what Major League Baseball is trying to do, I try not to talk about it too much, even on my show, because it gets boring. And I know not everybody wants to get inundated with numbers and boring CBA stuff. I get same with like the salary cap in football, dead money. I get it. We want to watch sports and talk about the juicy stuff. Understood. But I think that there's a guess on my part, but I would have to think that certain contracts will be grandfathered in. Like, think about this. If they would, let's say if they would have given Pete 5 years, 200 or 5 years, 180, whatever it may be, whatever Baltimore gave him, right? I can't imagine the new CBA comes in and baseball's like, all right, you got to cut Pete. Like, that's not how it's going to work. You would have some wiggle room. And again, you would be grandfathered in. You'd almost be, and then you can't do anything like that moving forward. But obviously, if you like money on the books, guaranteed deals without adding to it would have to be taken into account. That's the financial aspect. And I just don't think David Stearns has earned that sort of credibility. Right now, he's got none. And it's a double whammy because it's one thing. I was saying this the other day, like, it's one thing when they were chanting, Alonso's name late last week, Thursday, whatever, Thursday, or I think it was Thursday, whatever it was. I remember talking about it on my show, and I was saying, hey, listen, guys, as much as you all love Pete, and I get it, like I've had, Don Mattingly, who's my all-time favorite player. He was even getting booed at the end. His back went out. He wasn't the same player. And, in a lot, he's saying with Ewing as Patrick got older, I'm in a weird way Yeah, I want to win, but I also want to keep my guys around because that's very attractive. Ideally, you do both, but I'm not just looking to jettison people that I've got an intense connection to for the sake solely of winning and selling our soul. Because I understand that fan, whether you're a young fan just falling in love with the game, Pete, your guy, or you're taking your kids to the game, you're a dad, you got the Alonzo jersey, the Nima. I understand that there's real emotion there, and I've always tried to respect that myself because I'm not a Mets fan. I think I was able to maybe compartmentalize it a little less emotionally. This goes back 2 years. Me and Sal were talking about this years ago.
Yeah.
Years ago, before when he was still here, obviously. And even with Tiki, I remember saying to Tiki, I'm like, when the Yankees finally signed Judge, I'm like, the Mets should take a page out of what just happened here and preemptively, now I know Pete eventually turned down a contract, but they could have done it earlier and maybe we wouldn't be at this point. But the ultimate point is I always understood the baseball reasons, based on his age, based on his lack of athleticism, based on the position he plays, based on his defensive deficiencies, based on the fact that he's a righty, based on the fact that the power aspect, while he's great at that, all-time power, that's really the only great thing about his game. So I understood trying to build a team in a different vision. But when you do that, you better be right. Otherwise,
Yep.
the baseball team stinks, and now people hate you as well because you took away their guy. So double whammy for Stearns, who's been a complete zero as the Mets boss. Zero.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And the whole thing with Alonso, I find funny because I was having this talk with Lou. I kind of tied it in with the Knicks, and it worked out for the Knicks this year because I killed them when they fired Thibodeau without a plan.
Uh-huh.
It
Yep,
seemed
yep.
like they were trying to just go after this guy's coach or this team's coach. And
Yeah.
if there was a plan, I think I mentioned if they let Alonso go and they signed like a Paul Goldschmidt to play
Mhm.
first,
Mhm.
now your run prevention theory looks like it makes a little more sense.
Mhm.
But the whole way they let Alonso go and preach run prevention with Polanco and Vientos and Beatty, I think that's the thing that drives me crazy as a fan because watching the team every day for 30 plus years, just tell me the truth. I don't want to feel like I'm lied to because I don't think as fans, especially in New York, and you know this, we're not stupid.
No. No.
You're not playing the run prevention game with a guy who played one pitch at first base over Alonso.
Yep.
It just doesn't make sense. And
Yep.
that's why I think, like you said, Stearns has no leash with the fan base.
None. No, they can't stand him. I mean, you want to talk about taking on a villainous quality like almost immediately. That's David Stearns. I mean, even going back to Beningo, the boy wonder, and all that stuff, which I thought was a little bit early for Joe. Joe was on Stearns immediately, but he was really bagging on him because he's an Ivy League guy, whatever, and Joe was just all over him for that. My opinion, when they brought in Stearns, I'm like, this is a brilliant move. He's young. He's a Mets fan. He's from here. He's going to get it. Now, he doesn't get it. I thought he would get it, and he's proven to be anything but brilliant. But why I was intrigued with the Stearns hire was I remember saying to myself, like, and on the air, obviously, like, well, if he can build out the kind of team in Milwaukee, pitch, catch the ball, contact, speed, the way the game's kind of going, or the way the game should go, in my opinion, and then come to the Mets and be able to accent that with Cohen's checkbook, like his pure
Yeah.
fundamental staple characteristics of building a team, but then whether it's a great Japanese pitcher that Cohen, by the way, he tried to get every one of them, or
Yeah.
Soto, and he got him. Like I thought that would be a really good marriage of a new age philosophy with an old school, almost Yankee monetary approach in terms of not buying everybody, but adding to it. And you just haven't seen it. I mean, every night. I mean, he really hasn't gotten anything right. I mean, the Polanco move, disaster. The Simeon move, I just saw before he's out. He's got that grade 3 hip flex or whatever. That disaster. Third base, absolute. Before Bichette, disaster. The Bichette contract, is he going to really opt out? Who's giving Bichette that much? No. So
I wouldn't.
no, nobody will. So that will be a disaster.
Yeah.
It's not their fault that Clay Holmes got hurt. That absolutely hurt them, no doubt.
Right.
Stearns didn't bring in Senga. It's not his fault that Senga is soft and has no backbone and doesn't want to compete and all that. So that wasn't on his watch there. But the Frankie Montas deal was, giving Sean Manaea a 2-year extension was losing. I know Diaz got hurt, but losing Diaz based on I view it as a clerical error. Like they didn't want Pete, they didn't want Nimmo. I think we all believed that they wanted Diaz. They just they lost out by a couple of $1 million, which was a mistake. I mean, going out and getting Luis Robert. I mean, it's one thing if you take one risk I
Yeah.
get that. Like, look at that. Imagine if like the Mets had David Wright at third base and like Delgado, like a Beltran, a good team, right? And then you take a flyer on a guy who was in a bad situation, who's been a little bit banged up the last couple of years, but you think he could be revitalized in a winning competitive situation. You can roll the dice on guys like that, but you can't roll the dice on 3 or 4 guys like that. It's
Yeah.
reckless, and this is where we
And,
are.
and
And,
think that they're going to be starters and contributors every single day.
Correct.
yeah. And I think the scary thing about Stearns is like, I think for the fan base, I know for me, if he would have re-signed Edwin Diaz and he got hurt, I'm not blaming Stearns for
No,
that.
you
Diaz
can't.
was
No,
our guy. It
I agree.
happens.
I agree.
And I think the scary thing is the guy that he pinpointed, and I heard Kay say this, was Kyle Tucker.
Yeah.
Could you imagine if Kyle Tucker was here right now making $60 million a
Wow.
year?
No,
Man,
no.
he'd be getting destroyed.
No, I can't. I mean, even Bregman was getting booed over the weekend. I mean, the one thing,
Yeah.
the Mets aren't the only team that's made myriad mistakes here. Like, it's become
Giant.
very, you know what I'm saying? And not to exonerate Stearns, and Met fans don't care about the plight of some of these other players, but some of these other teams, whether it's a Tucker, whether it's a Bregman, whether it's some pitchers that got some longish contracts, they just, for whatever reason, they just don't seem to work out anymore. It's insane. Most of them don't. Now, it's worked out for the Yankees with Bellinger. It's worked out for the Yankees with Fried before he got hurt. It worked out for the Yankees with Garrett Cole before Tommy John, but he gave you a couple of epic seasons, one of the
Oh,
best.
yeah.
So there are some examples, and there's other teams that have had some good moves as well, not just the Yankees, but the Yankees have had bad ones as well. Jacoby Ellsbury, et cetera.
But they cover it.
Yeah, well,
I'm
that's
sorry
a
to
good
cut you
point.
off.
Yeah, that's true. They're able to cover it because I want to say they have better players, but I mean, do they really have better outside of pitching, which matters? Do the Yankees really have a better night-to-night lineup without Aaron Judge?
But you know what?
Can you definitively say that this Yankee lineup is better than the Mets lineup? I can't say that.
No, but what the
No.
Yankees have is culture.
Yeah,
And
that's
and
true.
they have stability, and they
Yep.
have a front office that's stable. Cashman has been there for most of my life at this point.
It's been there 30 years.
That's what I'm saying.
And BT, the whole thing that we hear every day about Soto and Lindor and the rift and everything, people could say what they want. Jeter and A-Rod couldn't stand each other.
Yeah.
And they made it work and they won.
That's true. That's true. And that's a really good point. I mean, we all remember the pop-up with Jeter and A-Rod against the Orioles and,
Yep.
all the stuff, the Esquire article when Alex said, by the way, Alex was right what he said. He did. Now, one of your best friends shouldn't say that publicly, but what he said, for those who forgot, was, when he was with Seattle, when you play the Yankees, you don't really game plan against Jeter. You've got to worry about O'Neill and Tino and the Thumpers. Bernie,
Right.
he was right. He was actually right,
Mhm.
but it obviously didn't look good in print. And Derek holds a grudge as much as anybody in sports, which I get. That would have bothered me as well if my friend betrayed my trust like that and basically dissed me publicly. But if the Yankees didn't have, whether in 09, CC and Burnett and like a Swisher and a Damon and some of the other good players that and it was just the dynamic of, say, A-Rod and Jeter, it would have been amplified because they would have lost more and that relationship would have been probed more deeply. Nobody gives a shit when you win. Nobody can. Reggie
Right.
Jackson and Thurman couldn't stand each other. Goose Gossage got into a fight with, I think it was Cliff Johnson in the shower. Like, those Yankees fought a lot internally. And even the 86 Mets guys had friction on that team,
Yeah.
Whether it was like was it Backman and Darryl or Backman and Darryl and Dykstra or, Keith. I know Keith had an issue. So even Gary Carter, rest in peace. I love Gary, but they made fun of Gary all the time. He didn't go out and party, and they always used to, so we can sit here and say, oh, everything was great with the 86 Mets. No, everything was great because they had a bunch of dogs. And like, if you throw one of their guys, they're throwing a 2 of yours. They're charging the mound. They're putting up 8-9 runs a game. They're rolling into every city. They're going to beat you, and they're going to take your girl. And they're going to laugh in your face when they do it. Like, that's the old line with the Mets. And all the other stuff becomes very trivial when you win. But when you lose, what's wrong with Soto and Lindor?
Yes.
What's wrong with the manager? What's wrong with the GM? This is just, it's always been this way in pro sports.
Right.
It's just the Mets' turn again to go through the process of getting ripped apart, and they've earned it. They've earned every speck of criticism. This has been a disaster, just a joke for the Mets.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I do want to switch because we're running out of time, and it's funny because we saw it just with the Knicks. People were running cat out of town.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden, everybody's in love with him again, and I get it. Like, I do want to switch to the Knicks because we know you're a big Knicks fan,
Oh
and
yeah.
we haven't seen anything like this ever in our lifetime. It was an absolutely historical, magical run, and Brunson. What do you even say about the guy?
Well, I say he's the best Nick of all time is what I say now. That's what
There you
I
go.
say. To answer
I
you
said the same.
directly, I didn't see Clyde play. The older generation, older than me, they'll plant the flag in there for Clyde. I get it. 37 points, against the understood game 7. But for me, he clearly passed Patrick Ewing. And I'm looking at the
Yeah,
Ewing jersey that's
Yeah.
hanging to my home. Like I love Pat, love the big fella. But I remember saying I took a lot of heat for this very early. You guys could find this on Twitter where, I mean, Brunson's first year. So that was what, 23? What year was that? Hold on. 20, 26, 23. I guess it was
23.
20, 24. What year was it? 22?
So-
Whatever. I may have been 22. Whatever it was. I said, it's very obvious that Jalen Brunson impacts winning on a night to night basis more than Patrick. And Knicks fans were like, dude, hot take. What are you talking about? And I'm like, some of you maybe chiming in didn't see Pat every night, didn't have good hands, didn't pass out of a
right.
double team very well, missed some clutch free throws, a little selfish, great player, but flaws. Now, Brunson's got flaws as well, defensively, sometimes a little ball dominant, but that's what I say about Jalen Brunson. And, your point about Cat, people wanted to run him out of town. I was one of them. I mean, I've
Yep.
owned it. I was dead wrong. I was calling him soft. I had 3 S's: soft, sloppy, and slow. And by the way, when I said that, I wasn't wrong because they were playing
No.
they were playing a very different brand of basketball,
Yes.
and he was disengaged and he wasn't. And then the onus from within. So give him a ton of credit. Give Mike Brown credit for being adaptable. Give Jalen Brunson credit for not monopolizing the ball as much. Like the roles became different and everybody accepted them. So to me, it was an amazing. Like number one, I never thought the Knicks would win a championship. I always hoped they would, but you never think that they would based on where they were. But if you would have told me that not only will they win, but they'll basically either blow you out by 30, 40, or 50, or come back from 14, 18, 20, 29-point deficits and still win the championship. Like, it's the most improbable script. And the thing that I remember when my dad first took me to the Garden for Pat, when Pat was a rookie, and he would, I remember him looking at the retired numbers and he was explaining each of the characteristics of the older Knicks. Hey, here's how Clyde played. Here's what Red Holtzman was like as a coach. And then he talked about Monroe and Willis Reed, and he gave me the scouting report. And the thing that he and others that saw them play always say about those Knick teams, they were so unselfish and they had a great IQ. And the way this team meshed with the embracing of their roles and sacrificing and the resilience and the toughness. I don't mean the physical toughness of the 90s Knicks. Nobody can play that way anymore.
Yeah.
The mental resolve and being all in for the cause was off the charts. Number one, unexpected. And number 2, amazing. Just amazing.
And that's why, the question comes up the moment that the Knicks won the championship, the question comes up, what's next? Like, do they run it back? Do they look to trade for Giannis? Like, do they make a move for Giannis? In my personal opinion, you can't break up the starting 5. Like, do you put pieces around them? Every championship team is going to have moving pieces. Just with the salary cap, it's almost impossible to keep the same team twice. So, we're hearing now that Mitch Robinson might not be able to get under that second threshold of the salary cap, which is fine. Like I said, we won the championship. I can't ask for anything more. But in terms of trading for a guy like Giannis Antetokounmpo, like, I don't want to break up what this core has, because what this core has is the exact opposite of what the Mets have. They have togetherness, they have leadership, they have understanding on how each other plays and how they make each other better each and every night. So would you make that trade or attempt to make that trade? Oh no, Giannis is in Miami now.
No, he's in Miami, but no, I would not have. I know you know that, obviously. But
yeah.
There was a point during the year I would have, for sure, when I was really down on Cat. And again, I've flat out said that the Knicks would not win the championship, and I'm thrilled to be wrong. Like, I'm not trying to hide from that. It's okay to be wrong. You got to own it, right? You got to have an opinion in the moment. They did not. They did not look like a championship team, and they proved me wrong, and many others wrong, which is a beautiful thing, right? In terms of running it back, I'm okay with Mitch moving on. I love Mitch. Longest tenured Knick. We all love Mitch, right? But his deficiencies they're pretty obvious. I mean, he's hurt a lot, can't hit free throws, and if it's not a dunk, he's a 0 on offense. Now, it worked for this group, but moving forward, like it seems like they got a few things up their sleeves here. Like last week, Mo Diawara, the 3-year deal announced out of
Yeah.
nowhere.
Love
Okay.
it.
And we
Love it.
saw him play this year. He got minutes and he
Yeah.
looked pretty good shooting threes, and he acquitted himself very well. So they did this a couple of years ago where out of nowhere they announced an extension for Deuce. Now Deuce had a horrendous finals.
Oh my God.
I
Yeah.
know, and he was a little bit banged up this year as well. But he's proven to be a viable Nick, and I feel like they've got the same read on Diawara. Hawk-Porty, big, strong, young, cheap. I mean, really, and not you see this in football a lot. Like a team wins a Super Bowl, and like their aging linebacker gets a lot more money from somebody else than
Yeah.
because it's a Super Bowl, and that's just the way it goes. And
Yeah.
Mitch is going to hit a threshold like Isaiah Hartenstein getting that $75 million deal the other day. And even a couple of years ago when he had to lead the Knicks because they could only offer him $16 million based on the birds' rights, whatever the heck it was. This is just the price of being a championship type of team where, teams will come and pick like a parasite or a carcass and, hey, all right, Mitch is free. We need a big, he's a champion. Let's get Mitch. And I'm okay with that. You can, and they're going to have to even think about the kid that they drafted, Nickel, out of Vanderbilt, shooter. So they're in their minds, they're saying, all right, we're probably going to lose either Shamet or Clarkson. So let's make sure we get somebody with a similar skill set where, we're dotting our I's and we've got the starting five, which I agree should be left intact and will be left intact. But the other pieces on the periphery, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th men, that's just business of being very good. And the Knicks aren't alone in that.
And one of my favorite moves that we made so far is, re-signing Jose Alvarado.
Oh, yeah.
Coming here mid-year, he brings that New York grit, being a kid from Brooklyn.
Dog.
And talk about a culture guy, somebody who bought in from day one and understanding. If anybody knows New York, it's Jose Alvarado.
Yeah.
And what he did to that locker room. And I mean, you saw the difference in intensity in the team when he was on the court.
God,
And
I love him.
And his intangibles that he brings both on and off the court is priceless to me.
There's no doubt.
He's been phenomenal.
There's been games where there's games where he scored too, but there's been games where he didn't even score and he still had like a +9 or a plus. His defensive impact, he's a pain in the ass. Like he could pick your pocket from the moment you inbound the ball. He's sneaking up on you. He's running through picks. He's gonna chirp. And when you play 82 games, as much as we want to think every team's going to play hard every single game, and for the most part, the Knicks do. They're one of the few. But the NBA, even in baseball, it's kind of unrealistic when you play that often. So you need a guy who's going to kind of keep everybody on edge a little bit, the opponent on edge, because when he's chirping, even if the Knicks are a little lackluster that night, like third game in 6 nights or a road trip, whatever it might be, that infusion of dog is going to permeate the huddle. And like, you can't help but look at him and say, I mean, if this now he's making a couple of bucks, but if this guy's making peanuts and he's acting this way and I'm making 40, 50, 60 million dollars a year, I better, I better bring the same intensity. So I think it's so good for practice, so good for culture. My only regret is I was thinking this. I'm like, man, why couldn't he play at St. John's? Like that's the kind of dude that should have been playing for the Johnnies all those years ago.
We just missed out on a big Johnny.
I know.
A pick before us with Atlanta, man.
Oh yeah. Yep. I know.
That was Zuby, right? I wanted him.
But they weren't going to take him anyway. Like, that's the one thing that I think maybe you guys understand this, but it's too easy to say, well, all right, the Atlanta Hawks picked Zuby at 23. The Knicks had the 24th pick. They would have taken Zuby. I know Zuby had a great workout for them. Great. And I knew Zuby was going round 1. My son was asking me every day, Dad, round 1. I'm like, yes, he's going to go in round 1. Trust me. Back of round 1, he's going round 1 because he can defend 1 through 5. He's got a good shot. Even if the numbers aren't great, he's got good mechanics. He's got a relentless motor. He's an elite athlete. He played for Patino. He's going first round. He's a winner, right? So, but given the second apron stuff, and you saw what the Knicks did with the other trades, even if the Hawks took, player Y and they passed on Zuby, I still don't think the Knicks were taking Zuby based on the money. I don't. So it would have been nice, but, we got that back in the day way before your time. But when I was a kid with Mark Jackson, that was the guy that I wanted the Knicks to draft, and he fell. And he wound up going to the Knicks, and he won the Rookie of the Year, and it was awesome, man. But I was hoping, maybe there's an outside shot. We get to do that again. But I knew based on the finances and what Dolan projected with Craig the other day or a week or two ago on the Fan with the second apron, the signs were there. Any chance, not because they're cheap, because it's just too punitive. to
Yeah.
operate in the second apron, even though it looks like Leon Rose and some people are trying to convince them to get into the second apron. You just knew that that was kind of the plan. So I was thrilled for Zuby, but I didn't think he was going to the Knicks. I just didn't.
That makes a lot of sense. So I have one more question,
Yep.
and you might have thought about this before. This is going to be, just New York in general. If you had a Mount Rushmore of New York sports,
Mhm.
and I do want to say just the players that you've watched in your time, either covering New York sports or as a fan, as a kid,
Yep.
who do you think those four would be if you had to pick a Mount Rushmore for New
Okay.
York?
So I had to have seen them. That's the one. Okay. Mark Messier, Lawrence Taylor.
Okay.
Lawrence number one, I think. You can make a case Lawrence is the greatest football player of all time. I mean, Jerry Rice, Jim Brown, Tom Brady, Walter Payton. There's a couple. I get it, but Lawrence Taylor is on that without doubt. I've got to put Mark Messier on there. Guarantee the hat trick, first cup since 1940 for the Rangers back in '94, obviously. So I got Lawrence Taylor. I've got Messier. Now I'm between Jeter and Mo. Obviously, got to have a Yankee there.
Of course.
So I would think, I mean, Jeter as the position player probably had more value day to day, sure. But Jeter's not the best shortstop of all time. I don't think he's the second. Like, I think there's shortstops who were better. There were shortstops better when he played, let alone in the history of the game. Nobody's ever been better than Mo. And I don't think anybody gave a manager such an advantage like he gave Joe Torre at the back. So I'm going to say Mo over Derek. So I got Lawrence Taylor, Mark Messier, Mariano. I mean, I'm not going to put Eli there, even with the 2 championships. I'll just give him a little bit of love. I'll walk you through my process. It's not Ewing. Could be Brunson. I'll get back to him. I mean, you could go Jeter and Mo. I could do that.
You could.
It wouldn't be an Islander. It wouldn't be a Devil, even though there's some great ones. It certainly wouldn't be a Jet. I mean, that's for damn sure. Let me see. Would it be a Met? David Wright. I love David Wright, but no, I'm not quite David Wright. Piazza, no. Had great years with the Dodgers, but not Piazza. You know what? I'm going to say Lawrence Taylor. I'm going to say Mo and Jeter. I'm going 2 there, and I'm going to go Mess. Those are my 4. And Brunson, have the chisel ready in case he gets another one, or in a couple of years, couple of more All NBAs and some big seasons. Then maybe I got to bounce Jeets and I got to get Brunson, or I'll just make it a 5-some instead.
That's awesome. So, BT, at this point in the show, once again, Vinny and I would love to thank you for coming on. We really appreciate your time. At this point, we want to give you the floor, take a couple minutes to, tell all of our followers what you have going on recently. If you'd like to plug any show or anything you have coming up, the floor is yours.
I appreciate that. I mean, listen, you can obviously see behind me, the logo, BT Unleashed. I do a show every day on YouTube here, Monday through Friday. I go at 10. Like, I'm treating it like when I was on the Fan. Every single day, I launched it. Let's see. My last day was December 19th on the Fan. I launched it that which was a Friday. That Monday, December 22nd, and I've probably taken off maybe 3 days. One of which was to travel back for my in-laws out of state the Monday after Easter, and I think one I was sick, and maybe one more. I mean, it's really laying the foundation. So I'm here every single Monday through Friday at 10, doing a lot of motivational speaking, public speaking, and obviously still doing St. John stuff. I've been doing St. John's games for a long time. That was a blast this year. Man, I thought they were going to beat Duke. They were up. Oh God, that was tough.
Yeah.
It's a tough one.
Oh, that was tough. I was in DC. I'm doing the game with Mink, and you could taste the Elite Eight, and then they just stopped making shots, and whatever happened. And Duke obviously won. Yeah, I mean, listen, Twitter, Instagram, all that stuff. But the YouTube show, we've got 2 sponsors. We've got a law firm.
Nice.
One of the oldest, biggest law firms in New York City. Sullivan Pepane jumped on for me, which I appreciate tremendously. And Premio Sausage. I mean, if you guys barbecue.
Barbecue.
Yeah, I mean, who doesn't? You go to Yankee Stadium, you go to City, you see Premio, see it at MetLife as well. They jumped on as for a whole year, right? Just to start. Awesome. We got some other stuff cooking in terms of business, but it's been I think it's been equal part, amazing and exhilarating. And early on, probably a little scary as well, going from the radio, for basically 25 years to a totally new outlet where I am literally in charge. I hired a producer. My guy J-Rod is money. He's absolutely awesome. But like the business is, myself and my wife, who's got an extensive sales background from her days at ESPN, to like the marketing, to all the stuff. Like it's really a 1, 2, 3 person operation. So it's a lot, but it's my own content. I love it. We're almost at about 25,000 subscribers.
That's amazing.
Nice.
Yeah, we're getting there. Already 3.5 million views total. We're getting there. Some big guests. A-Rod's come on. Stephen A's come on.
Great.
Boone has come on. Michael K's come on. LaGreca had Rothenberg on. So take a lot of pride in Patino, in really good guests. And yeah, I take calls as well. We set it up where I can actually take calls
That's
on my
cool.
show, because that's one of the things I was missing. I'm doing the show, and I always love the interaction, people calling up on the fan, or back in the day when I was on 1050. Like, I love that energy. I love that engagement. I love that back and forth, that battle, that dance, So to be able to incorporate the calls, which we did starting about a month or so ago, got that up, got that operational. And then I do some other youth content. I coach, pretty busy in the coaching sphere. My son's 11, my daughter's 9. So I coach a couple of the teams. So I'm really into the youth aspect, about how jaded it's become on some level.
Yeah.
So I got my hand in a lot, man. And the motivational speaking, I love. I find it really interesting to get up there and talk, whether it's, I guess it was about a month and a half or so ago. I had a big speech at Verizon Cross Country Mortgage, which is the biggest lending company in the United States. I went and I spoke to their higher level executives. So it's a different dance, but for me, that I've ever had. But really, guys, at the end of the day, it still goes back to the spoken word, which is what I've always done and which is what I've always loved. So I appreciate the pop.
No, of course, and you'll always have 2 supporters here from Staten Island. Vinny and I,
Absolutely.
we've been longtime listeners of you. We're happy that you're successful with your show and everything. So you'll always have 2 supporters here from Staten Island.
I appreciate that, man. I thank you. I felt the love. There's no doubt. I have felt a lot of love from a lot of people who, now I'm also smart enough to know that not everybody likes you. I get that, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But from, when it was announced that, me and Sal were leaving the fan to now, like, the support's been strong. So, I'd like to think that along the way, people appreciate real, and
Absolutely.
you know what I mean? I hope that comes across. I know that my passion comes across, probably one of my better characteristics. I think people know I'm not a phony, that I'm a lot like them. I just happen to do this for a living. So I appreciate the support, obviously, from you guys, from everybody, man. I really mean that. Thank you.
Yeah,
Well,
and I just wanted to say, I just want to thank you. And listen, there was 2 guys that I always came back to. It was you and Joe, because
mhm.
I always felt like you guys were the 2. You were real. You said it like it was. You were yourselves, and I always appreciated it. So, like Lou said, we'll always be big supporters of you, BT. And thank you so much for joining us
No, it's
today.
my pleasure. I don't think you could be any other way, man. If you're not you, and if you're not authentic to who you are, they're gonna smell you out. Like, they're gonna sniff you out. This guy's a phony. This guy's a fraud. And you can't be afraid, as you guys do this. And I wish you guys the best of luck. You can't be afraid to, say what's on your mind. Whatever it might be. And I know that you guys aren't, but you got to stay that way, because if you try to do this and try to placate people and play down the middle, it's just, you're going to go nowhere. Like, people want to hear opinions, even if they disagree, and then you give the avenue to express their disagreement, and then you get after it and you say, all right, we disagree, it's all good. That's what you got to do. But I appreciate you guys having me on, and I know we've been trying to make it happen for a little bit. I've obviously been very busy, but I
Of
enjoyed it.
course.
You guys are
Thank
doing a good job, and hopefully your Mets
Thank you.
get their act together, but not too much. I kind of like seeing the Mets fans squirm a little bit after all the nonsense with Soto and little brother, big brother. Come on, watch what you ask for, guys. Not easy being the Yankees.
It's all in fun. It's all in fun. But
I know, for
guys,
sure.
that's gonna wrap the episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe to both our show and BT's show here on YouTube, and we'll see you next time from the Shealess podcast. Thank you, guys.